Gene was so overpowering in what he did with dance and music, but he was also a great actor. And how did he look at acting and musical and dancing? Did he view things separately or as a whole? How did he look at himself as Gene Kelley, the actor?
Well, it's funny, he never thought he was a terrific straight actor. He felt that he didn't get a great opportunity to perform straight roles. One of the things he always said, I was always playing to the fourth balcony on Broadway, and so he was overplaying, he felt sometimes. But also, it's very funny when I go around, people always ask me, they'll say, did your husband ever do any acting? And I'm thinking, well, what's he doing up on the stage? You know? But there's a real distinction, because Gene's whole notion was that the dance and the music should further the plot, and that was very different from what had happened in musicals pre-Gene Kelley, when you would essentially stop the show and do a number on a stage and then go back and resume it. So Gene's whole notion was that you make the dance, you integrate it, and it tells the story. And I guess Sing in the Rain is probably one of the best examples of that. But he wanted to do more straight pictures, but I think he always felt he was pigeonholed a bit as a tap dancer and kind of the hoofer, and that he really couldn't do much more than that. You see him in The Black Hand and then Inherit the Wind, which he originally did not want to do, but then Stanley Kramer mentioned two names, Frederick March and Spencer Tracy, and Gene said, I'll be right there. And he did feel proud of that. I think he felt that he really came up and met a different level. And there were moments in this, he thought that he said that, I guess I was okay when he comes in to see Richard Wharf, and he said I was usually pretty good in the tough sections.
Was there anything on how he got on with Ziad or Ziad was paying more attention to that interminable midnight mass service in Deanna Durbin? Did he get any direction, or was there any recollection about Ziad at all?
He really didn't speak about him very much at all. I think it was just mostly about Gene and Dickie Wharf playing and playing games and things like that, because it was really about Deanna. This was Deanna's vehicle. It wasn't Gene's. And there's so many little things in here that just crack me up, because he would do this stuff to make me laugh, which was the funny faces and the little. And you said he moved so.
Yeah, when that one scene where he came down, where in the beginning, and she's down in the kitchen, and they find the blood-stained pants, and when she's going to send her upstairs because she wants to clean the pants, Gail Sundergaard, and then Gene comes down, and he just reminded me of my cat. The way he moves, and he just glided down the stairs, and I mean, if you didn't know that Gene Kelley was a dancer, and you saw that, you could say, boy, that guy, I mean, he can move. He just glides. It's amazing.
Funny you mention a cat, because it was actually a cat that taught Gene how to move he was studying in Chicago at the Chicago Dance Masters. He was taking classical ballet and also taking Spanish dance with a gentleman named Angel Cancino, who happened to be Rita Hayworth's uncle. And when he was taking classical ballet, he would leap up and he would hit the ground, and he would hit it with a thud, and he couldn't figure out how to land softly. And as he was walking back to his apartment one day, he saw a cat leap up on a windowsill and then leap down. And if you watch, particularly Invitation to the Dance, you'll see him with that same kind of movement. So it was interesting that you mentioned a cat. And he plays this kind of lovable heel. I mean, here it's a charming murderer. It takes it a little bit further. But he had this kind of tendency. I mean, you look at Pal Joey, I mean, that's pretty dark. He's sleeping with everybody on the set. And even in For Me and My Gal, he's a little distasteful character, but he was able to, he said in this one, he could not believe that audiences would still be sorry when he gets killed. I mean, he just couldn't believe it, but he was able to do that.
Well, he had the Kelley smile and that Irish, I mean, you couldn't, even at the end when he's in there with Worf or something, I mean, he played it well, but it's like, it's Gene Kelley, you know, it's hard. Your own story with Gene is quite fascinating. Could you tell us how you met Gene and take us through, you know,
about 2 hours?
No, just a truncated version.
Well, I think it's very funny on this, because they always comment that Felix Jackson was 20 years Deanna Durbin senior. Well, 20 years, I mean, that's nothing. Gene and I were 46 and a half years apart, which is, we would have won the Guinness Book of World age differences, but Gene lied about our age when we got married. he added 5 years to my age, so very counter to Hollywood. So Coco Chanel used to do that too. I think it's a great idea because then by the time that you go, gosh, she looks fabulous for 65. In a very truncated version, and I do tell this I've been doing a one-woman show about Gene, and I tell a longer version, but the real irony is that I did not know who Gene Kelley was when I met him. And I spent a week with him not knowing who he was, and I think I was the only woman who didn't fall over when they met him, and that may have been kind of interesting to him. So you have to come see the show, and then I'll give you the full story.
Oh, the tease. But I think one thing that is worth mentioning is that the time you did spend with Gene as a historian and a biographer, there was a lot of looking backwards at his career and his work that ordinarily would not have happened, because he was not someone that was necessarily rooted in looking at the past and doing nostalgia jams. So you found out a lot about, it was a journey learning about him, but also learning about his career as well, correct?
Well, yes, and that's interesting because he brought me out here he brought me out to write his memoirs, and I was only supposed to come for 2 weeks, and we got married 5 years into that process. So I don't know about most of the wives in this room. I don't know if you wrote down everything that your husband said every day or every moment.
Oh, God, I hope not. Gemma?
I mean, we would be sitting at the dinner table, and he'd say, "You're not writing," and I'd say, "I'm eating." You know, it's like, but I had the great privilege of recording Gene's words almost every day for over 10 years, and so it was this extraordinary account. And as I was telling Alan earlier, what was interesting is that Gene was so used to kind of telling this very succinct version of his life that you may read in some accounts. So it was very different for him to have somebody kind of going at it every single day, and this kind of reassessment and reevaluation of his career and what his contribution was. So fortunately, it is recorded, and I do have that, and it will be coming out ultimately. So. Because there's so many more dimensions to him. I always say he was far more interesting than he allowed people to see. There was gift with language and with having read all of Somerset Maugham's work. I mean, there are not many people who do that, but he knew things inside and out. And he was particular. He was very specific about how he wished to be remembered. And it was interesting. It wasn't for being up on the screen. As charming and as gorgeous as he is, he really wanted to be known for being behind the camera, for the choreographing and directing, and particularly for learning how to use the camera to capture dance on film and to create a particularly American style of dance. So interestingly, after this, after he did CoverGirl, which really hit the mark, then he'd already made the deal to go to Universal, but after that, MGM refused to ever loan him out again. So it was a very pivotal point. He had intended to go back to Broadway and never expected to stay in Hollywood, but he said, "I'm going to stay in Hollywood and lick that camera thing." So.